The best gavel-to-gavel legal news and information on the net is right here. This is the Cyber Law and Business Report, only on webmasterradio.fm.
And we're back. This is Ben and Kelly with the Internet Law Center. And from time to time, we cover some issues that aren't necessarily directly germane to cyberspace. For example, we had Tom McMillan on to talk about the 40th anniversary of the Munich massacre, and then 72 games. And today is actually a historical date of significance that very few people are aware of. In 1801, President John Adams signed today the District of Columbia Organic Act. And what that did was it transferred control of the District of Columbia to Congress. And from that point forward, the citizens of District of Columbia have been disenfranchised. They would not be able to vote for president until 163 years later. So from President Jefferson to President Kennedy, the residents of the District of Columbia had no vote. And they still do not have a voting representative in Congress. In only 169 years later, in the 70s, were they given a voting representative, even though Puerto Rico has had one since 1898. But it's non-voting. And so there have been efforts to give D.C. a vote, both in the House and the Senate. They have no representative in the Senate. And so on this historic occasion, we brought in D.C.'s representative to Congress, Eleanor Holmes Norton. She is the delegate to Congress for the District of Columbia. She's a former member of the EEOC under the Carter administration and a Georgetown law professor. And so it's been our honor to be able to talk to Congresswoman Norton about this historic day and what it means, because so few Americans are aware that even today, 2 centuries after the American Revolution, there are over 600,000 Americans living with taxation without representation. Congresswoman Norton, this is a historic day in the District of Columbia, and why is that?
Well, this is the day that the District of Columbia became the nation's capital after a 10-year transition. The land, of course, ceded from Maryland and Virginia, where their respective states had made sure that while they were in transition, they would maintain all of the rights that they had always had, and those are the same rights as other American citizens. Because once the capital became the capital, Maryland and Virginia would lose that jurisdiction, and it would be up, of course, to the Congress to grant the district the rights that these residents of Maryland and Virginia had had when they were citizens of those states. Lo and behold, the Congress did not do it. The people went to the streets. So 1801 for us is not only the day when the district became the capital, but it is the day when residents lost their rights that they once had, and the rights that we seek now to reclaim.
And it would be some 100 and approximately 150 years later before district residents were even allowed to vote in presidential elections.
That is certainly the case. There were on and off periods when they had various forms of local government. For example, the radical Republicans after the Civil War not only gave the district a local government, but a delegate to Congress like me. Remember, delegates were supposed to be on their way to statehood. And the Republicans, who now have their opposites in power, I must tell you today, who empowered the district. And there were some periods even before that when there were bits and spots of having local government. But after Reconstruction, the district lost all that it had won, and interestingly enough, had won when Frederick Douglass was an active Republican, crusaded for what he called suffrage for the district, and himself ran for this earlier version of what we now call the city council and lost to another member, but became the recorder of deeds, became a trustee of Howard University, and a staunch Washingtonian. Much of that history is lost, and that history is going to be reclaimed because in a few months, Frederick Douglass is coming to the Capitol the first time the district has ever had a statue in the Capitol to represent the District of Columbia. I had a hard time getting it because there are some senators who think we shouldn't have a statue in the Capitol because we're not a state, but we found a way to do it. Residents voted that there would be 2 representatives. We've gotten our first one, and that would be Frederick Douglass, and of course the second one would be Pierre L'Enfant. It took us a long time to get the first one, so I'm going to have to keep at work to get the second. And the reason we want the second is because states generally have 2, and we pay the same taxes that residents of states had, and we want exactly what they have in every other respect as well.
And one of the things you want is a vote in Congress. And right now, you're not allowed to vote on anything other than in committee, right?
I vote in committee. I even wrote a memo that allowed me, when the Democrats were in power, to vote in the committee of the whole on the floor of the House. But that was by rule, and the Republicans changed the rule when they came to power and even took the vote of the taxpaying residents of the District of Columbia. They took that, even though that has been tested. I first got that vote when I first came to Congress in the early 90s. The Republicans sued the House. Both the District Court and the Court of Appeals said that it was at their discretion that this vote in the Committee of the Whole could be given to a delegate, and I voted. But they didn't change the rules. So you get some sense of what I'm up against when I try to get the full vote.
Right.
You see that they won't even let me have the vote that the courts have said is constitutional.
Now, there was a proposal to give to add 2 members to the House. One would be for the district, and one I believe was going to be allocated to Utah. And so there would be a voting member of the House in finally after all these years. Is that effort going to be renewed this Congress?
Well, no, that was modeled after the Hawaii and Alaska way to get into the Union. It took them 50 years until they finally found a way that would make it a wash, in effect, because because the pattern, which has always, by the way, been the pattern in admitting new states, would mean that no one state would benefit. So when it turned out that Utah had barely missed getting a vote because its missionaries, its Mormon missionaries, had not been counted because they were out of the country, and they were heartbroken, took that to the Supreme Court, and still couldn't get that vote. They partnered with us, and I got a good number of Republicans here and in the Senate, and that bill passed the House and the Senate and would be law today, and the district would have a voting member of the House, except for an NRA amendment that would have wiped away all of the district's gun laws.
And so will that effort be renewed this Congress?
Well, no, because Utah has its vote now. That's a once in a lifetime chance. It doesn't mean when any other state wants a vote. It was a state that came very close to getting the vote and agreed, and the House seemed to understand, and the leadership of the House and the Senate. Remember, you can't do anything with Republicans in power. So I can't even get a bill to the floor for the district.
Wow. With
Republicans in power. So we couldn't do that because we don't have people who run the House who are at all sympathetic with our status. In fact, they have been part and parcel of keeping our status as it is. They oppose voting rights under any circumstances. They oppose, most Republicans over here, we got some votes, but most of them voted against the bill, which would have given Utah a vote and the district a vote.
Now, Congresswoman, a major theme of the American Revolution was taxation without representation. And it's unfortunate that, 2 centuries later, that's still the case in the District of Columbia. I mean, has there ever been a thought to, instead of arguing for the vote, just say, well, don't tax us?
Of course. I've even put in a bill to that effect, and that got nowhere. They want our $4 billion. So that doesn't work either.
Syndrome.
But that's an important question because the other the territories, we of course are not a territory, but the territories, Guam and Virgin Islands and the like, they have the same representation as we do, but they have something we do not have. They do not pay federal income taxes,
right?
So they don't complain. They have the best of both worlds. We have the worst of both worlds.
The OAS, the Organization of American States, their Human Rights Council, found that this was a violation of the OAS Charter and of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and which was obviously a major breakthrough. But when you talk to people outside of the district, are they even aware that people in the district don't have any voting representation in Congress?
Well, they're largely unaware. And all the polls show, and there have been a very substantial number of polls done. Those polls show that people favor full representation for the District of Columbia. It's only when you get to Congress that falls off.
So it's the concept that works. It's just getting the politics to work that seems to be the problem.
That's exactly the case.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you for joining us. I know we only have a short amount of your time, and but I wanted to highlight this issue because so many people are unaware that you have over 600,000 people who go to wars, pay taxes, but have no vote in the United States House of Representatives or Senate.
Thank you. I appreciate your calling, because it does seem to me that it's the last remaining vestige of our failure to live up to our own standards. We didn't do that in the beginning, in the first place, with a constitution that condoned slavery, with the fact that the only people who could vote were white men. So we've rectified most of the infirmities of our full rights because we pay our full taxes.
Well, Congressman, I wish you good luck today in getting this word out and challenge you to go to the House floor to try to vote and see what they say. But any event, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank
you. It's been a pleasure. And
Thanks very much.
Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Pays $1.6 billion a year in federal taxes, and they've lost more residents in more than 20 states. But they don't have a vote in the Senate, and they don't have a vote in the House. It is taxation without representation over 2 centuries after the American Revolution. So please give it some thought. We'll be back next week here from sunny Santa Monica for another edition of Cyber Law and Business Report. If you're going to South by Southwest, bon voyage, have a great time in Austin, and we'll be talking to you while you're there. Remember, you can download a mobile app and listen to us while you're in Austin, or just listen on live here at webmasterradio.fm. Thank you for joining us again. This is Bennett Kelly with the Internet Law Center. I'm saying happy trails. Court is adjourned. We'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of WebmasterRadio.fm, the world's largest business-to-business radio and podcast network. We welcome you to sample past episodes of this program, as well as our complete library of programs, on demand or on the air via our 24/7 live audio stream at www.webmasterradio.fm. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of WebmasterRadio.fm's management or sponsors. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without authorized consent of WebmasterRadio.fm is prohibited.